Yeah, my name is Christian Bukhardt. I'm a producer, DJ, mastering engineer. My first contact with electronic music, I think, was through my older sister. When you think about electronic music, I also think about Depeche Mode, EBM music, electronic body music in this time. So she introduced me to this end of the 80s, yeah. And I was a big Depeche Mode fan. This was, I think, the first contact to, of course, more commercial music. And then, yeah, straight beginning of the 90s was then the HR3 Club Night with Sven Feth. And all these Frankfurt people in this time were broadcasting on the HR3 was the first contact, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, my music taste started there. Then I was listening also a lot of hip-hop music in these days, the old school hip-hop. From now, when you compare to nowadays, the good golden times with this funky groove, which you can hear in most of my productions, of course. And yeah, I have so many influences from wave music, goes to each genre. And over the years it developed into a more minimal direction. Yeah, originally I come from Heidelberg, which is 100 kilometers close to Mannheim, where the time warp is. It was my friend Tomio from the Sushi Club. He had a big studio already in the beginning of the 90s, and he showed me everything and got hooked from it. Yeah, he showed me everything, and in '95 I bought my first synthesizer connected to an Atari computer, so there was no audio in the computer, and this time it just started at this point, and yeah, I started to make music with this one keyboard. And I tried to make techno with it, but there were no techno sounds, no 909, no 808, no 303 inside. So it took me some weeks, some months to get behind, okay, I need some sounds for it. And there was this 909, 808 card for it. And I bought this, and then yeah, I was starting producing. Yeah. It was the XP50. It's from the JV 80 something. It's the keyboard version. Yeah, you see it still in some studios. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a sampler, but it was just this time where it started with 8-track plugins for the Commodore. It was this time, so I started experimenting with this and recording to tape. And shortly after, I had the 8-track in the computer, so I was able to sample, and the production like is it nowadays. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about releasing music or to become what I'm now. It was more just fun and experimenting, and I was never thinking in these days to release music. So I think it was '95, I bought a synthesizer, and then I moved to Offenbach in 2000. And there I had my first own studio room with some gear. Yeah, in these days I was surrounded by a lot of art students from the HFG in Offenbach. The first release was I did a HFG sampler with music. I had a project with a jazz drummer from there. And this was actually the first release, but it was just locally here. It was like an art project, not really a release for outside from Offenbach. And then my friend Tomio from the Sushi Club, he came. He had like a television show. It was broadcasted also on HR. It's the same company from HR3. Broadcasted in the nighttime when the usual program was finished, between 2 o'clock in the night and 5 in the morning. So they were just running chili videos and his music, and then he had a more like techie version of it, and he asked me to do some videos and music for it. So I bought like a cheesy camera, was driving around by car and filming like the surroundings of Frankfurt, and put some cheesy filters on with Premiere and cut it together and wrote the music to it. And then it was broadcasted on television, yeah, for I think 5 or 6 years. I did 4 videos and they were running in loop. Not every night, but sometimes with other videos. And so this was my first release. Yeah, next step was my friend Federico Molinari. I know it already from Heidelberg, over some friends, and he moved to Frankfurt. This was, I think, 2005, around 2006. And I did a lot of music with him in my studio, and he said, oh, I'm making a label now. I want this track, the first release, and the label was called Oslo, and the track was called Karais Collapse, and I think it was 2006, the first release, yeah. It was the first really release what you can name as a music release in the scene, how do you know it now, yeah. It was on vinyl, and yeah, and Ricardo, Richie, yeah, some big DJs played it, and it was like, yeah, the start in the scene. I was connected, I was never the real DJ before, but we did in Heidelberg, back in the days, we did a lot of illegal parties. A friend had like a rental for equipment, sound and turntables and everything, so really often we just took the equipment and drove to the woods and built up everything and had a party, and it started with some friends. And the parties went bigger and bigger, and in the end there was one party. It was called Under the Bridge. It was beginning in the 90s, and there were like 3,000 people under the bridge, illegal party. And this was the finish, this was the last party was happening. The police came, of course, every time, but yeah, we were a lot of people. Every time somebody other gave the passport. And if you do this once in Germany, it's not a problem. It's only a problem if you do it recently. So, but every time another guy from us gave the passport. And so, but I never was the DJ guy, but more the raver, and more interested in the technique and the producing side, how to do the sound and create this. Yeah. Went too big, and it was this time in the beginning the police had no idea what's happening there. But over the time, of course, they got the idea what's happening, so it got more difficult to do it, and so yeah. And then there were also already clubs and everything, so we don't have to do it illegal. We were able to go to the clubs, yeah, and party there. Yeah, when the scene was big, I was still in Heidelberg, but we, of course, a lot of in the weekend we drove to Frankfurt and to the Omen Club. And I was really small, I don't know, the first time 17 years, so we drive to Frankfurt, a big city with the scrapers, and I was like, wow, it's dangerous here. I also thought, I never want to move here, it's too dangerous and like this, and yeah, 10 years later then I moved. And yeah, but it was good times, yeah. It was, when everything came up and it was fresh and new and a lot of things to explore, and it was a good time. And how was the scene back then? Like I said before, I was meeting Federico Molinari, we produced the music, and there were also like DJs like Vera. She also moved from Heidelberg to Frankfurt before me, so we were like a little crew, and also connected to still the guys from Mannheim and some guys from Frankfurt like DJ Meat. He had still the Freebase records back then. And so it was a mixed up scene before, where of course Sven and all these older techno DJs from the beginning of the 90s, and then around 2000 we created the second minimal scene here, when minimal came up. And yeah, it was also the time when the Robert Johnson opened up, beginning 2000. It was exactly when I moved here, so we spent a lot of time over there listening to Ricardo and Luciano and Richie and Atta and all these guys. So yeah, this was really the start for me. Exactly the first one, I'm not sure, but we've been there every weekend. To compare how is it now? Yeah, it was there was this new sound, which I think Ricardo was a big part. It was minimal, but not the techno minimal from Minos or Richie before, this hard techno minimal. It was the beginning of this housey minimal, yeah, with nice sounds and vocals, and it was a new area, and this was exactly the sound catched me and the direction I was going after, yeah. Definitely mixed up with my hip-hop roots, so I did a lot of beginning minimal grooves with vocals, snippets from old school hip-hop tracks. I wasn't researching for every name, which track was produced or who's behind this, like maybe a DJ is, because he wants to get this record or this record or this record. For me, it was more like I was going to the Robert Johnson and was dancing the night away, and maybe straight to the studio or next day to the studio, and having this feeling, this influence in my mind without copying it. So just going with this feeling and creating my version of it. So it was more like this. So we had this area, and before, when you go back to the 90s, was like Berlin and Frankfurt were there, like maybe Munich and little Hamburg were like the techno cities. But then was this revival, around 2000, where the second crew, I would say, had this little hype, and later when we had a hype, like 2007 around. We had also the hype because then about 2000 everybody moved then to Berlin really fast, and everybody was watching on Berlin, and then 7 years later we came up 2007, and so everybody was saying, hey, there's still some guys in Frankfurt doing music. So I think this was one reason we had this little hype, because maybe everybody knows already Berlin and Berlin techno, so the view was, there's going something on in Frankfurt again, yeah. So. Well, I was always trying to not copy, to not doing what other people do. Like I said before, I was surrounded by art students, and they were my best friend Niels. I was with him in the studio for years, every night, and we are just doing with the bass, and we don't have results, but we had fun and we are exploring more the sound. And what these art students said was like, never do the same what the other ones is doing, do it different. So I was producing for a time without off sounds, no off hi-hat, no off bass. So this was a crazy time, because with off sounds in our flowing music, it's really hard, but I get it to work. And then after some years, okay, fuck it, I do off sounds, and then it was even more flowing. And I tried to do it, a little different. I had a time where I was doing all the grooves, hard sync, hi-hats, everything, all the drums, everything was hard sync. Only the bass line was with a groove. So because everything was hard sync, the bass line was even more grooving, and everybody was asking me, so how do you do these tracks? So they're grooving as hell. And it was only because I had hard sync on quantization on everything. Only the bass line was with the swing. So. I did everything autodidactive, or most of the things. Like I said, Tomio was showing me how everything is working with the MIDI and the cables and stuff, but I think the first years I did everything by myself, and nowadays you can watch a YouTube video for everything. Yeah, you can learn everything on YouTube, but back in the days this wasn't there. So it was a lot of doing a lot of mistakes for a long time in different areas, but these mistakes lead me to some special techniques or things never would think about, because it's more like I try to make the difference to something good. The learning curve, it was like starting and then experimenting, and then how I get more professional. Maybe I remember I had 1 year I was from the creative side, the worst side, but I was just searching for the perfect sound, audio-wise, or from the quality of the, like what you call now mastering. And I had 1 year I was just figuring out how the bass has to go with the kick and the hi-hats and the levels and the compression. So it was my technical year. I did horrible music in this year, but after this I had like the technique, but I get it from my side. So I had no teaching. I never had some courses or diplomas from schools or nothing. I did everything by myself. Wow, 1 million. I told you already a lot of names, and then of course I started in touring 2006, and I was traveling the whole world and to make each weekend friends and bonds and connections and people you do then music with, and there are a lot. Maybe of course I have to mention Arno. I didn't mention him. After I was a lot with Federico in the studio, then at some point I met Arno in these days, and then we matched completely together and had best times on parties in the studio and in his studio, and Okay, Arno told already. Maybe I can tell it from my side. I still had the old studio in Offenbach in the city center, and at this day, I don't know the reason, but I had something to do in the evening, and Arno asked, we want to do music here in Frosty, if you want to come over, and he said, okay, come over, but 6 o'clock I have to be, I don't remember, somewhere. And then they came in the studio and we did a track, and was like a bomb. Was just this one old school sample from the Fatback band, this boom, 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 this loop, and Frosty brought his 303 with him. And we did this bass line, and then we found a vocal, and this was, the 4-track was the name, because it was just 4 tracks. And we cut it together, and then I said, okay, I have to go. And then before we were spinning around with our pressure and things about the name, and then the week after they named the label after the track, Pressure Tracks. Sometimes it's completely matching, like with Arno or with Fede. This was, you don't have to talk or something when you have the same idea in your head for music, or the same style, the same taste. So it's just flowing. It's like you're working by yourself, because there are no discussions or something. And sometimes you have somebody who has different taste, or you try and you figure out, okay, you have to talk a lot, or no, not this sound, or not that, or I don't like this. So it's like this. So yes, it has to be the right person. And nowadays a lot of these collaborations is more like remixing. You do a collaboration, but in the end someone has the idea, sending to the other, and it can be, the result can also be really good. But I prefer to go together in the studio and have the same vibe and doing a track. That's the hardest when you get a family and the time is less, and also back in the days we were only producing nighttime. We go in the studio at 8 and came out in the morning at 6 or something. And the nighttime is really more creative than the daytime, but nowadays I can't do this anymore. So I'm producing mostly daytime, and that's sometimes it took me a while to switch from the nighttime producing to the daytime producing. The good thing is the results are often better when you are into it. To get something done in the daytime is because you're more focused, you're more. But to drift away a bit, it's I do a bit yoga in the morning, a little meditation can help you stay focused while producing and to reach some area in your mind which you can compare to a nighttime session with some beers or stuff. To get this point, was really hard for me and took me some years to switch over. Of course, the UK had, comparing to Germany, the biggest scene, I think. Back in the days, a lot of sound is coming from there. And of course, for a time I was also really into drum and bass and jungle and this kind of music, which came from the UK. And of course, the US, the old Detroit, Chicago sound is of course, so many great productions, and this was also a big influence, definitely, I think, for all of us. The English, they invented basically the rave culture, the touring, the traveling. I think they were the first bringing parties outside the UK to Ibiza or different spots in Europe. So I think they basically invented party tourism or the whole thing you have nowadays. The first time on Ibiza, I have been to Ibiza was in 95, 96. Just with a friend for raving. And back in these days, you had the old space with the old space terrace, and it was a different world. When we dive into, it was before Cocoon, then came in 2000. It was, I think the real Ibiza vibe was back in the 70s, and even in 95, 96 when I was there was already like too much tourism, too much over it, and but still less than nowadays. So, but I enjoyed it these days, and I still enjoy it nowadays, how it is. Of course, when you go in August, or it's a bit too much, August, September. But I like it the most beginning of the season, or like I go tomorrow after the season. It's a beautiful place, it was also the Robert Johnson, some point, Rarich. Came with Ricardo to the Robert Johnson and played with him, and this was for me the first time I was listening to a Romanian DJ. And afterward, there came a lot of good music from there, and of course we all liked this music, so because it was amazing. At the moment, I just was re-releasing all my old music, so my biggest hits I had on my own label, like the Delight and Doubled Up, and I did like remixes with a lot of DJ friends, from Reboot to Jamie Jones, who else, Nima did also a remix, a lot of people I know. Arno also, This was this year, and now I'm just working on a release on Cecile. in Mannheim. I work on this, and yeah, music with some unknown Frankfurt DJs also, some DJ friends on my label. I always try to evolve my sound to the next level. Sometimes I go a step back. Sound-wise, yeah, I try to have everything open from techno to house. Of course, every time minimal. And but when I compare my sound to back in the days, it gets more musical, more harmonies inside, more melodies. Still hidden, but there are some. Back in the days, it was just like beats and bass and vocal and sound. And yeah, it gets more YB. That's another point of producing music is all this technical stuff, but producing with your mind. You produce something and you're in the studio, and it's always usually the newest track you produce. You think it's the best track. Yeah, when I think back, my biggest hits, I never had this feeling, or some days later, because in the nighttime when you have finished a track, I was walking out every time like, wow, that's the track. But then you listen next day and then maybe it's not a big hit. So, and I don't remember exactly if I had usually the other people, the audiences in the end, the ones they judge your track or they listen to it more and more. And I think the most hits surprised me in the end. That's like I said before, I ever tried to not jump on the train or copying other people or comparing. But yeah, sometimes, of course, you're seeing what's going on outside, what sound the people like now in these days, and. Yeah, but I still try. I never jumped on any train or something, I can say here. Yeah, there is in the end no balance. It's more like, yeah, when you send music, especially to bigger labels, of course they have the label sound, and of course you have to do something what is fitting to them when you release on these labels. But yeah, I have to fit in the label, but still have my sound. Want to keep my sound, and yeah, that's not easy every time.